What better way to celebrate the 100th video upload to this, my movie review channel, than with a video about video games. Screw you, YouTube algorithm. This is the third video in my gaming backlog series. If you haven't watched the other videos in the series, I recommend at least watching the first introduction video, which will explain what the series is and how I'm approaching my gaming backlog. And for the spreadsheet geeks amongst you, my beautiful backlog is attached in the description below for your perusal. Today I'll be chalking off another 10 games from my 100 plus strong backlog, and I'll leave chapters for each game if you want to go back and forwards, and please let me know in the comments below if you loved any of the games I abandoned. Starting off with a game I didn't complete but didn't quite abandon as such. Animal Well is a retro inspired Metroidvania developed by Shared Memory, which is for all intents and purposes a single developer called Billy Basso, who sounds like he should be a Wild West outlaw. And as reviews across the board will show you, Basso has come up with something pretty special with Animal Well. This is a beautiful looking game which uses basic old school sprite characters but bolsters everything with modern lighting, particle effects and water animations. You play as a blob, unlocking sections of the map by solving a myriad of puzzles with an ever-growing arsenal of multifaceted tools. It's jam-packed full of clever ideas, secrets and satisfying puzzles, and was a joy for me almost from start to finish. I did hit a point where it felt like I'd nearly revealed the whole map and was getting quite frustrated working out what to do next and where to go. And it does feel like one of those games where you have to read online guides to work out some of the really obtuse puzzles, and that does annoy me. Looking for that hidden moment to propel the game forwards began to feel like looking for a needle in a haystack, and I felt I'd seen and very much enjoyed what the game had to offer and was just happy to put it aside. So for a first in this series of videos, I'm giving this an abandoned rating of 8 out of 10. Sable, however, is a game I can say I confidently smashed with the abandoned stamp, just like you smashing that like button. This one should have 100% been my jam. A semi-open fantasy world which is traversed using a super cool looking hoverbike, offering up a plethora of weird environments to explore. I sadly hit the wall fairly early on with this one, finding the world on offer just the wrong side of sparse. The town's buildings and odd anomalies you find during your journey just don't present enough mystery and wonder. Coupling that with a very light touch story and vanilla characters, Sable just wasn't involving enough for me. I could have forgiven these issues and just played it as a light and chilled exploration game, but this is also a disappointingly janky and buggy game to play. The hoverbike, which could and should have handled like a joy, cutting across the sand like a hot knife through butter, unfortunately snags and jolts like a hot dog through cement. Certainly not a bad game, and other players will probably be a lot more forgiving of its issues, but it had to go. Now, I'm a big fan of the first 3 Far Cry games, especially the original and what I would consider as the pinnacle of the series, Far Cry 3. Far Cry 4 and 5 didn't do a great deal for me, but as 6 was available on PlayStation Plus Extra, I thought I'd jump back into the series to see if things had moved on. And very oddly, it took me about 40 hours of play before I suddenly twigged, but no, the series has really not changed from Far Cry 3. I suppose its easy, familiar gameplay loop, which in all fairness is pretty polished at this stage, just managed to hook me and put me into gaming autopilot. It's not a difficult game, nor is it any way original, and one day I asked myself why I was continuing, as unlike Far Cry 3, this game's story and villain didn't make me want to play to the end. Giancarlo Esposito is absolutely wasted in this role, phoning in his now trademarked charismatic psycho shtick. This series really does need to do something different with its next iteration, and if not, I'm not going to be suckered into wasting more of my time. A game which didn't waste my time, not even for a second, is the magnificent Cocoon. Cocoon's game director is the legendary game designer Jeppe Karlsson, whose previous games are the classics Limbo and Inside. And just like with those games, Cocoon has absolutely no fat on the bones, and it sticks around for the perfect play length. Now, this is genuinely one of the best and cleverest puzzle games I've ever played. You control a bug of some sort, exploring an alien world. In these worlds are orbs. Each orb has a power. For example, one can turn platforms on and off. The genius of Cocoon, however, is that orbs are not only tools, but worlds themselves. You can enter each orb and come out in a new world. As you progress, this becomes more and more complex as you can take orbs into other worlds, requiring certain tools in certain other worlds to progress. Towards the end of the game, you have to think about how you can take worlds into worlds into worlds, sometimes having to solve puzzles across worlds with a range of the orb's tools. And I genuinely do not understand the effort that must have gone into designing these puzzles. The game makes you think of deviously brilliant solutions to puzzles, which makes you question yourself, as these solutions just feel too clever. And yet, if you've conceived of its possibility, it is almost definitely the actual solution. Cocoon makes you say wow at the incredible game and puzzle design, but it also makes you say wow to yourself that you put these pieces of the puzzle together in the right order. So a near perfect puzzle game which is an absolute must play for fans of Portal, the Talos Principle, The Witness and other classics of the genre. My score for Cocoon is 9.5 out of 10, which, spoiler alert, is not the highest score I'll be awarding in this video. From one of the best games I've played in the last year to what I feel has to be the most overrated game of 2024, Dragon's Dogma 2. This game certainly has some good points. Combat in general is pretty enjoyable if a little scrappy. The pawn system is a nice idea if a little underbaked. Traversal and exploration is interesting enough as the game doesn't hold your hand too much. But Dragon's Dogma 2 runs like a dog's dinner with an awful choppy frame rate, which I wouldn't mind so much if this was an incredible looking game rather than a perfectly okay looking one. What surprised me most about the game, however, is the incredibly poor dialogue, both in terms of writing and delivery. This is coupled with a generic story and no real standout characters. This made immersion into the world difficult for me, and when you add all the problems together, the abandoned stamp had to come out. Sifu is a game I abandoned for very different reasons. This is objectively an excellent and original game. It looks stunning with a bold art choice, and the game world, although very gamified, pulls you in with its well-crafted one more go mechanics. It plays really well too with a deep combat system, which I imagine could be very rewarding to the right kind of player. I can only personally imagine this, however, because I was extremely bad at this game. Beat 'em ups aren't really my thing, but I'm always willing to try any game putting an interesting spin on existing genres. But man, this game is punishingly hard. If you're not a beat 'em up purist with a good memory for combos and lightning reactions, you're only going to end up where I did, disappointed and frustrated. And the clever aging mechanic, which makes the game harder the more you fail, felt like it was mocking my own slowing reactions. So if you think you'll enjoy Sifu, you almost certainly will. If you're a bit of a beat 'em up noob like myself, I would advise caution. I would only advise a swift purchase for my next game, a true gaming phenomenon and one of the biggest surprise hits of 2024, and a game that I will very likely never complete or abandon, but continue playing until the ends of time. It's Balatro. The game, another from 2024 made by a single developer, in this case Local Thunk, has gone from strength to strength, selling more than 5 million copies on all formats. I've already sunk well over 250 hours into this preposterously addictive game, which seems to be small fry, as Local Thunk recently revealed on Twitter that the game's cumulative playtime is a mind-boggling 11,000 years. Not hours, days or weeks. Balatro players have put 11,000 years into this game. Wow. Which is essentially the gaming version of crack cocaine.
Tell you what, that crack is really moorish.
It may look a little daunting if you haven't played Balatro or a game like it, but it's actually a fairly simple roguelike using a deck of cards and poker hands to build your score, and it's important to know that you don't have to understand poker to play. Joker cards affect the points or multipliers of each card or hand or suit, and you need to build a combination of Joker cards which will keep incrementing your score until you beat the final boss. Just like poker itself, there are limitless combinations of how you can play, which gives the game its endless one more go mechanic. And it's the kind of game you can just have a quick go of every day if you fancy it. I can't really fault Balatro, it's one of the success stories of 2024 for very good reason, and if you're just mildly curious about the game, I urge you to give it a try. It's only £13 on PlayStation 2. My score for Balatro is a very easy and obvious 10 out of 10. I put quite a few hours into Remnant 2, granted not as many as Balatro, but I made pretty good progress before the game's pull began to wane. Again, this is objectively a good game. The shooting mechanics are excellent, the world and level design is interesting, and the game throws tons of varied and challenging beasties to blast. The characters you can choose to play as offer different playstyles, along with a massive range of weaponry and powers. All the ingredients are there, but narratively the game is a bit bland and a bit of a slog. Throw in a series of extremely obtuse puzzles which don't match the simple gameplay, and an unforgiving difficulty curve, and Remnant 2 began to slowly lose me as the fun shooting wasn't enough to keep me going. Marvel's Midnight Suns, to use an old football cliche, is a game of two halves.
Marvellous.
One part is a brilliant action strategy card game featuring exceptionally polished cutscenes and genuinely thrilling representations of Marvel heroes, and the other part is a very weird friendship simulator where you can see Captain America, Thor and Wolverine chit chat and a book club, and I'm not joking. The strategy part of the game is what kept me playing. It's a turn-based game similar to XCOM, but cards are used to make moves where each hero gets offensive or defensive cards to defeat the enemies, and a lot of fun comes from selecting an effective combination of heroes to take on each mission. It's massively enjoyable and had me hooked all the way through to the conclusion. Had Midnight Suns just been this strategy game with a few extras, I think I would have been perfectly okay with it. But half the game is spent inside a mansion where all the heroes get to know each other, occasionally fall out, and play video games and watch films together. I will say this part of the game is far from terrible. There's tons to do, plenty of secrets to find, and some of the interactions between the heroes feel worthwhile. A lot of it though, including the overarching story, is very silly, very melodramatic, and just plain odd. Midnight Suns also features an extensive character creation system where you can make the game's hero, the laughably dull hunter, look exactly how you want. I think I may have killed some of the gravitas and drama of the character situation with my effort, who had me and my partner laughing every time he appeared on screen.
Now, who wants to go save the world?
A deeply odd game, but I had a decent amount of fun with it. My score for Marvel's Midnight Suns is 7 out of 10. And the final game to be crossed off the backlog for this video is the utterly charming Tinykin. The puzzle-like platformer has more than a little in common with Nintendo's Pikmin games, but has enough of its own ideas to make it a worthwhile play. What makes Tinykin so easy and pleasant to play is the joyous traversal mechanics. You get across the floor in a bar of soap, which acts like a zippy skateboard. You get up and down from high reach areas via zip wires, and you can glide across massive distances from a top shelf leap. All of these simple but super effective methods mean that exploring this world and trying to find every single Tinykin is never a chore. There are a few types of Tinykin which help you find others, such as the little fellas who stack in a totem formation to help you reach hidden heights. And honestly, the whole experience is fun and frictionless. My only issue is the story, which is clearly bolted on and is true nonsense and perfectly skippable. It's also a very easy game with barely any challenge other than finding all Tinykin and secrets. But in this instance, the difficulty level only adds to the charm. Some may find the game a little too short too, clocking in at around 6 hours, but this also worked perfectly for me. My score for Tinykin, 8 out of 10. So that's another 10 games off the backlog, and at the time of writing, still over 100 games to go. The next video in this series will feature, amongst others, Cult of the Lamb, Dave the Diver, Tunic, Thank Goodness You're Here, and The Plucky Squire. So many games. Right, I'm off to have one more go at Balatro. Thanks for watching.
Game over, man. It's game over.